Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now a couple of days ago I got a text from my mum which read, "Dearest son." No, it didn't. I wish it said something along those lines, but honestly it was just a text regarding a desktop PC that she was thinking about buying. She wants a new system, a new family PC that she can do office work on and perhaps play a little bit of Fortnite or Overwatch. I'm joking. Probably wants to play Sims 4 or Candy Crush on it. But nevertheless, I said, let me build one for you or help you choose what system you want. She said, don't worry, I've already found one. I'm going to buy a Dell. Those are words that no one wants to hear from their mother. Now, I actually found out that this system was being sold by a family friend who's moving away and selling all of her worldly possessions. So I thought, why don't we give her the £300 she's asking for it so that it can help toward the moving costs or a new piece of furniture in her house, anything like that. Now she was obviously looking for a quick sale, so the only piece of information I got regarding this machine was the photo that she sent my mum, which my mum then sent to me. This was of the exterior of the machine, and I could just about make out the Ryzen sticker on the front. I thought for £300, a Ryzen-based Dell Prebuilt system probably isn't too bad, and if the specs are a little weak, we can always upgrade it further down the line. My mum then said, why don't you review it for your YouTube thingy? Her exact words. And I said, it's not really my thing. We sort of tend to take a look at older computers or maybe even individual components as opposed to whole systems. She said, no, it'll be something a little bit different and I'm sure your viewers will enjoy it. I know she watches the channel, so seems I've got no choice. This must be relatively new as it's still got the plastic wrapping on, though there are a few scratches around the back. The specs going into this were pretty much unknown to me, except that it was a Ryzen PC. After looking up various pre-built systems to try and re-familiarise myself with a market I've never been too knowledgeable of, and discovering tons of reviews for various systems, it became clear that I had forgotten that pre-built PCs are, and always have been, big sellers. It's a market I often disregard and maybe sometimes shun because of how accustomed I've become to building systems from start to finish, but there are millions of people out there who just want to go out and buy a Dell. That being said, you'll likely find that opting for a pre-assembled machine proves to be a little more expensive in most cases, and I'm told this system when bought new costs over £500. I have to say I don't think I've ever built anything for £300 that's had a case this nice. It's down to personal preference of course, but I like the way it looks half peeled. Furthermore, there are so many ports on this PC. Whatever you need to plug in here can more than likely be plugged in. Aside from the presentation, the chassis is also very sturdy, with a nice weight to it as well. This very shot was the first time I had opened this thing up. I knew it was a Ryzen-based system from the text, but the finer details were yet unknown. My heart sunk a little when I saw the graphics card because the tiny fan assembly made it look nothing like anything relatively modern, which would have been a bit of a shame, but it turns out that it's actually a Dell-branded Radeon RX 560, an entry-level £100 or $100 card. Though it does appear to be the cut-back version of the Radeon RX 560, the card with 896 stream processors as opposed to 1024 of the original. There was quite some controversy over this when AMD launched the different spec'd card. I'm pleased to see a micro ATX motherboard in here too. Older Dell systems used to use custom form factor boards, meaning that if they ever needed replacing, you'd need the exact same one. The same goes for the power supply, which is standard ATX here and also features two 6-pin graphics card connectors. That's nice, but at 460 watts you'd have to be careful what you put in here. It's still enough power for something like a GTX 1060 though. These two are accompanied by 8GB of DDR4 memory in single stick form, though there is a spare slot so another 8GB could be added if you wanted to do so. And that just leaves the processor. To find out exactly what that was, I decided to power the system on, and when I did I was met by this delightful blue hue emitting from the lower half of the build. After last video's Alienware laptop and now this, I'm totally sold on PC lighting. I need way more RGB in my computer. The CPU, by the way, is a Ryzen 3 1200, AMD's first and cheapest Ryzen, offering 4 cores, 4 threads and a 3.1 GHz clock speed. With the system powered on and the specs confirmed, it's time to see what they can do when working together. As this will be my mum's main PC, I decided to use it for a few hours just browsing the web and looking at Facebook, to which it excelled at. This thing dominates in Microsoft Edge. Seriously though, I had a Ryzen 3 1200 in my main rig for a few months and it always felt snappy and responsive along with the 8 gigs of RAM it was paired with. Everyday usage will be no problem whatsoever on this system, and if it does ever start to feel a little sluggish, there are plenty of CPU upgrade options. After establishing the model number, I looked it up and found that you can buy these new in the UK for £550, and honestly that's not as much as I thought it would be, even though it would probably be possible to build something with similar specs for a little less, even on the new market. So I know what you're thinking, can this thing game? It's probably not going to be primarily used for such a thing, but we might as well see how such components work together when it comes to gaming, in case you want to build yourself or buy yourself a PC similar to this one. First of all, I tried Assassin's Creed Origins, and you'll have to bear with me today because I used the onboard Radeon Relive capture software, which isn't usually available on the RX 560. However, I was able to download a tweak that allowed me to use it, and as you can see it did cause a little bit of lag. Without recording, Assassin's Creed Origins ran at 30 frames per second pretty solidly with the medium settings, and as you can see pretty much the CPU on all cores as well as the GPU was maxed out here during my playtime. I just ran around a little bit, got into a bit of mischief as you can see, and the game held up pretty well in my experience. Now in Fallout 4 I combined the average of a bit of town gameplay or city gameplay along with just roaming around in the wild, and combining those averages gave us an average of 50 frames per second, once again at 1080p with the medium settings. I think you'll find in a lot of games the Ryzen 3 1200 RX 560 combo can pretty much handle most titles from within the last few years at 1080p low or medium, though turning things up will mean that you'll see a few frame drops here and there. I'm not sure how the standard 560 would differ in comparison to this one, considering it's the cut down 896 shaders model, but perhaps that could be an idea for a future video if you guys want to see something like that. Fallout 4 on this system though, well, it ran pretty well, and the computer did start to get a little loud at this point, though most of the time this is what the fan sounds like. Far Cry 5 came off a little bit worse in the actual recording, but during just a normal play session with no recording enabled, I was able to achieve 40 frames per second on average, and the CPU and GPU usage figures were also a lot lower, though I have to say that even when you're not recording, the GPU will bottleneck the Ryzen 3 in most instances I found. Again, I'm not sure if this is the case with the standard RX 560, but with the 560D, it certainly does hold this processor back, though Far Cry 5 ran okay in my opinion at the normal in-game settings with anti-aliasing turned off. Next up we have Fortnite at, you guessed it, medium settings at 1080p once again, and I was able to achieve 70 frames per second on average here. Now, judging by this gameplay, it looks like there were a few stutters to anyone viewing it, but I have to say that once again this was down to the recording, and during a normal play session with no recording enabled, the game ran pretty much flawlessly. If you want to turn things up to high or even epic, then you'll probably have a harder time running this game, and there will be a few more frame drops here and there. So I think 1080p medium is pretty much the sweet spot to maintain and even exceed a solid 60 frames per second during your gameplay. Finally we have PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds with a mixture of low and medium settings this time to see 45 frames per second on average running the game on this map. Now I'm not sure how much the experience will differ depending on the map that you're playing on, but I can say that here the experience was a pretty playable one, though you will have to turn a few things down to low instead of relying solely on the medium preset, which isn't too bad, and the game still looks pretty decent in my opinion. After capturing all this gameplay, I decided to give a quick bit of video editing a go. As I mentioned before, I used to use the Ryzen 3 1200 in my system and always edited my YouTube videos with it. And even going back to it after currently using a Ryzen 5 in my system, I'm happy to report that I could still easily use this on a daily basis. Premiere Pro feels fast and snappy, and you should have no trouble editing or creating content should you want to start making YouTube videos of your own. There are faster processors, sure, but for the £70 or roughly $100 that you're going to be paying for this CPU these days, I don't think it does too bad of a job, to be honest. So to try and see whether or not we got a good deal on this once mystery spec machine and whether or not my mum saved money as opposed to letting me build her something similar, I put together an Amazon based price list of all the internal components. Of course they won't all be an exact match, but the main internals are the same, i.e. the CPU, amount and speed of RAM and the hard drive size. The setup list here uses a fully fledged RX 560 though. Without the OS it comes in at just under £400, so I guess we did get a good deal here by buying this pre-built. That being said, when you're purchasing a pre-built PC new, that isn't always the case, though once you've factored in the cost of the OS and the bundled Office software that comes with a lot of new systems, that gap in price does shrink a little bit. But it will of course vary from system to system. So as for this video, I hope you've enjoyed this rather unexpected review of my mum's new computer. If you did, leave a like on it down below, leave a dislike if you didn't, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you all again soon.